Good afternoon, Chairman and members. Item 1 is the proposed demolition of the existing dwelling and the erection of a replacement dwelling at Drift House, Brook Avenue in Warsash. Chairman, I'm going to show members a number of slides. I think we'll start off with just setting the context for the application before I show you the proposed plans, and then I'll finish with showing a number of photographs. I've got quite a lot of photographs to show you to give you the full picture of how the site sits within the local area. But if I could just start with this location plan, this plan on the screen in front of you. The site is located at the western extent of Brook Avenue in Warsash, in close proximity, and you'll see from the photographs I'll show you shortly, to the River Hamble. The site is the one with the blue pin here. It's one of 7, including the dwelling at the north here, a row of dwellings on the eastern side of the River Hamble, and all, as you see, all feature long rear gardens abutting the River Hamble and the designated status of the River Hamble also. A couple of things to point out on this plan. One in particular is this route here. This is the public footpath that runs along the eastern side of the River Hamble and separates it from the site by the mudflats, and then on the western side the river. This aerial photograph demonstrates the plan that I've just shown you. This is the footpath that I was just referring to, and the application site is located here in amongst that row of dwellings. So the proposal is to demolish the existing house on the site and to construct a replacement house. This drawing shows the proposed site layout in context with the surrounding houses on Brook Avenue. So just to point out the names of these houses, and we'll be referring to them a little bit later on when I show you the photographs. Also, the application site here, Drift House, to the immediate south is located Hamble's Edge. To the immediate north, the property known as Fenmead, Turnstones and Strawberry Hill. So the proposed dwelling on the site is 2-storey in scale. I'll show you some elevations in a moment. The bulk of the 2-storey massing of the house occupying the central part of the site, roughly where my cursor is here, and the 2 wings either side, north and south, being subservient in design and scale. Also proposed is a triple garage with first floor accommodation above as a detached outbuilding within the frontage of the property. So Brook Avenue, as exists at the moment here, the access off of Brook Avenue would be slightly realigned just to centre it into the site, but the majority of the existing hedgerow along the eastern boundary of the site would be retained. And then, as you come into the site, the proposal is to hard surface a large area here to allow parking vehicles and turning. The garage block here, and then the main house with a rear terrace on the western side of the dwelling, making the most of those views towards the River Hamble. A key thing to point out, Chairman, and you'll see this from the photographs that I'm going to show you in a minute, is the levels on the land. The levels of the site drop, I think I refer to the exact extent in my report, from the eastern side to the west. The site basically slopes downhill towards the river. So, Chairman, on the screen now I'm showing you the front elevation. So this is the eastern elevation of the house as is proposed. And if I just explain a little bit about what you're seeing here. So the architect has included on the left-hand side and the right the 2 adjacent dwellings at Hamble's Edge. what you're seeing here is the dual pitched roof of the garage outbuilding, and then behind it the wing of the house itself, and then the main part of the house, and then the northern wing of the house. You will probably be able to make out, hopefully Chairman will be able to make out here, the dashed orange line. That's the outline of the existing dwelling that currently stands on the site. The dashed red line that you see is the outline of the original proposal as originally submitted earlier this year. What you're looking at here is a revised proposal that's been submitted by the applicant. The image on the bottom of the screen is that same front elevation, but set in context to take account of the site levels and the boundary treatment, both existing and proposed reinforcement of that front boundary treatment, as the dwelling would be viewed from Brook Avenue. So this is a street scene perspective, if you like. So that explains why there's less of the house that's visible in this bottom image. It reflects the change in levels and the front boundary treatment. Turning to the rear, the image at the top here, again, the dashed orange line is the existing house. The dotted red line is the original proposal. And you'll see the back elevation, much like the front elevation, you've got the bulk of the two-storey elements set centrally within the plot and the two wings on either side. I should point out at this point, Chairman, the roof design, how the roof design's been arrived at, that this follows conversations between officers and the applicant about the overall bulk and size of the original submission and what could be done to that design to make it more acceptable. And the applicant has chosen to break up the roof into sections by making certain sections subservient, lowering the roof ridge at certain points, and introducing different features just to break up that matter. The drawing on the bottom of the screen here is the side elevation. So this is the south elevation of the new dwelling and the south elevation of the detached garage outbuilding. And this also demonstrates the drop in site levels as you go from east to west into the site. And that's the corresponding northern elevation. Just to show you in its entirety the proposals for the garage. So it's a triple garage at ground floor level with what's labelled as a guest room office at the first floor level. Chairman, this drawing we felt was important to include on the presentation to show you, and it's really an analysis carried out by officers. This drawing has been prepared by officers to assess the extent to which properties in Brook Avenue span their respective plots, and what's the general bulk of those houses along Brook Avenue. You'll see some photographs in a minute of the existing situation, so I won't labour I won't talk about this in great detail. However, you've got Strawberry Hill, the northernmost, except for Bywater House, the northernmost dwelling in this row. Turnstones, Fenmead, the proposal here at Drift House, Hamill's Edge, and Ferry Lane House. And written on here is the respective widths of those two-storey bolts. Now, the two-storey bolts of each of the dwellings will vary accordingly. They're different heights, but broadly speaking, the comparable widths of those two-storey central parts are shown there on the drawing. It gives you an idea as to the kind of space about the building, particularly at first floor level, between dwellings, between plots. It gives you an idea as to what the existing and proposed character of the street is. So, Chairman, I've got a number of photographs to show you, and I will run through these very quickly. This is the dwelling as it exists at the moment on the site, the photograph taken from the east looking into the site towards the river. Similar photograph there with Fenmead shown in the background also. And looking towards over the site towards Hamble's Edge, the property to the south here. So that demonstrates how the dwelling sits on the plot at the moment, not centrally within the plot, towards the northern edge of the plot. This photograph shows you the existing extensive boundary treatment in the front garden. And then moving round to the back of the property, this photograph is taken from standing towards the rear of the application site. So this is the application site here with the cream render. And looking back over towards Hamble's Edge, the property here with the render and the detached garage outbuilding within the front of Hamble's Edge there as well. That photograph, this photograph shows a similar perspective. It also demonstrates the drop in site levels from the roadside here, where the hedge is planted, into the site. And roughly where the photographer stood here is the position of the swimming pool, I suppose. And a similar perspective there, Chairman, looking back towards the entrance gates of the house. Turning round 180 degrees now. Excuse me, this photograph's taken towards the river. And you can see this on the right hand side is the boundary between the application site and the adjacent property, Fen Mead. And along here is the boundary between the application site and Hamble's Edge. And you can see the reed bed here at the bottom of the garden before the water. And here's I think this is the line of the footpath. And then in the distance you can see that the site, as it faces onto the river, because this site has, if you like, two public aspects. It has the street scene on Brook Avenue, but also the river scene, the riverside. The site is almost directly opposite Hamble, over the other side of the river. And that's another photograph giving that same perspective. Moving round now, Chairman, this is a photograph taken from the neighbouring property, Fen Mead, which is immediately on the left here. This is the existing house on the site, which would be demolished. And again, looking back towards the application property here, Fen Mead being on the left. So this photograph is taken from standing in the rear garden of Fen Mead. This photograph is taken from towards the bottom of the garden of Fen Mead, looking back across the application site. You can't actually see the dwelling at the moment, looking towards Hamble's Edge. Now moving to the other side, so these are photographs taken from the neighbour's property to the south. This is taken standing on a raised terrace within Hamble's Edge, looking towards the application site. And this photograph is taken from a window in that property looking eastwards, looking over the frontage of the application site. Back in the rear garden now, this is a photograph taken at the bottom of the rear garden of Hamble's Edge, looking back up towards the dwelling to be demolished here. And now back out the front. This is a photograph giving you an idea of how visible Hamble's Edge as a property is within the street scene. So this is taken from Brook Avenue. To add context, Chairman, this is a photograph showing Strawberry Hill from Brook Avenue, so looking westwards towards the river. This is Strawberry Hill with the two garage outbuildings on either side. And there's a number of photographs now of the river views, so I'll show you some photographs taken from actually on the river itself, from Hamble and from the footpath. So the footpath is running along here, where my cursor is now. The application site, I believe, is here, just behind this mast. It's here, centrally within the photograph. You can see the render. Obviously makes it stand out, makes it visible at the moment. This photograph is taken from the western bank of the river, from the River Hamble. And you'll see, and this will become more evident in a minute when I show you the photographs taken from the footpath, each of these houses, because of, and this is a particularly strong characteristic of the area, each of these houses have fairly open central parts to their gardens, with fairly abundant planting along the boundaries. But depending on where you're stood, you get views down those gardens towards the respective dwellings. So this is a photograph taken on that footpath that I've been mentioning. This is the part of the